Good evening, good morning, actually. Good morning, everyone. This is Stone Gasman live from New York City. And this morning we are going to be doing an audio commentary for 5 Days, One Summer, directed by Fred Zinnemann and starring Sean Connery, Betsy Brantley, and Lambert Wilson. Now, to anybody who's been following me and my commentaries for a while, I apologize because this commentary is kind of impromptu. The thing is, I was supposed to do this movie about 2 or 3 months ago. And what happened was I rented it, I watched it on the day I was going to do the commentary, and I fell asleep. And it wasn't due to the fact I was tired. I fell asleep because this is literally a truly boring movie. And I thought to myself, you know what? Okay, I'll cancel the commentary. We'll return to this in a few months and see if my reaction is any different. And it is different, actually. Like I said, I'm watching 5 Days, One Summer on Amazon. Paused on the Lad Company logo. I'll give everybody just a couple more minutes who's joining me this morning to go ahead and get 5 Days, One Summer. And like I said, paused on the Lad Company logo. Now, I've said this before, but I'm planning on doing the rest of the Lad Company library for basically the rest of the year, more or less every Sunday, with a couple of exceptions. But more or less every Sunday from now until the end of the year, I will be doing audio commentaries on the other Lad Company movies. This is number 14, and there's 26 in total. And the very last one that I intend to do is going to be on New Year's Day, and that will be on the original 1982 theatrical version of Blade Runner. So I'm going to close out the Lad Company commentaries with arguably the most popular Lad Company movie, although my personal favorite is still Night Shift. So at any rate, why don't we go ahead and get started here? Now, this is a kind of a longish movie, to warn everybody. It's 108 minutes. I didn't know if I would have enough stuff to talk about throughout this commentary, but I think I do now. I think we're good to go on this. So at any rate, I will go ahead and press play on the count of 3, 2, 1, and play. 5 Days, One Summer. It came out November 12th, 1982. And this print that I'm watching on Amazon obviously has a lot of anomalies. This was a box office failure, a major box office failure. Essentially, this was a $17 million production. Alan Ladd Jr. and the Ladd Company, obviously, they knew Fred Zinnemann because he had won awards for a lot of the movies that he made in like the 50s and the 60s, and ultimately 1977's Julia, where it ended up getting 11 Oscar nominations and I think 3 Oscars. I'm going to double check later. But yeah, it won Best Actress for Vanessa Redgrave in what was still a very controversial win. But I wasn't prepared for 5 Days, One Summer. Now, this is essentially, it's part love story, and it's also part mountain climbing movie, which I know sounds rather odd. But the truth is, the matter is that Fred Zinnemann was 74 when he made this movie. This was his very last movie, and he wanted to make a movie that reminded him of his childhood, of growing up in the in Switzerland in the 30s, and being around there before he eventually left that area because of the rise of the Third Reich. But he wanted to make a movie that basically, was a nostalgic trip for him, and going back to his youth in being in Switzerland near the Swiss Alps in the early 1930s. This movie is set in 1932. And the movie obviously came out in 1982. So this was essentially a movie that 50-year. Fred Zinnemann wanted to make this movie for years, to be perfectly honest. I mean, he fell in love with this short story that he read, which was like 25 years ago and everything. A Fred Zinnemann film. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the director of such classics as High Noon, Man for All Seasons, and Julia, and other films we will be talking about. But starting out, I mean, the music by Elmer Bernstein is very moody. And actually, the score by Elmer Bernstein is one of the few things I like about this movie. I mean, this is was a real struggle to get through. But then when I read about stuff that happened behind the scenes, I kind of felt bad a little bit for Fred Zinnemann. Not so much for Sean Connery. I mean, I guess he just wanted to work with Fred Zinnemann. He had already done a Lad Company movie actually the year before, 1981. He did Outland, which was written and directed by Peter Hyams and set in the future on the planet Jupiter. And it was basically like High Noon in space. Oddly enough, Sean Connery the year before had done High Noon in Space, which was Outland, and now he's working with the actual director of High Noon, which came out in 1952 with Gary Cooper and Grace Kelly. Absolute classic of the Western genre. But yeah, this was right after Sean Connery made Outland, which wasn't a failure, but it didn't really make the Lad Company any money. It kind of broke even though it's one of Peter Hyams' best films, and I think it should have done a little bit better than that. But so this was made at a very low point in Sean Connery's career. Now, as a lot of people know, he was, of course, James Bond, and he started out in the 50s, the late 50s. He did Disney movies like Darby O'Gill and The Little People, and but then when he made Dr. No in 1962, everything changed. And that was 20 years before the making of this movie. Dr. No, of course, was a massive hit. And of course, we had him in 6 other James Bond movies. The last one being a year after this would come out. Because like I said, this was made at a real low point in his career. The same year, he did a movie with director Richard Brooks, which I haven't seen, called Wrong is Right, which, from what I understand, is a satire. But here again, nobody really saw it back in '92. So in many ways, Connery was at the nadir of his career because, like I said, right after this, he would make Never Say Never Again. And even though the movie isn't great, I mean, he got a lot of notice for it. And eventually he would be cast in The Untouchables by Brian De Palma and win the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. And that kind of brought his career, it supercharged his career again. So, then he was appearing in stuff like Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade and Medicine Man and, stuff like that. So his career kind of had a resurgence after Never Say Never Again. But still at this time, he was at a real low point. This was probably the nadir of his career as an actor. And here, his on-screen co-star is a woman by the name of Betsy Brantley, who, believe it or not, is still working. She's still working hard. She did a big movie this year where she gave the voice of the title character, which I could talk about a little bit later. But so I will give Fred Zinnemann this much because there's he wanted to make this basically as a poetic ode to his youth. But see, the audience just didn't give a shit. And I think, rightfully so. Now, to be perfectly fair, I mean, I think this is a 2-star movie. And what I mean by that is like a 2-star out of 4. It's mediocre, it's forgettable, it's not really worth the trouble. But at the same time, it's not a total loss. I mean, the cinematography is one of the movie's best elements. I've already mentioned Elmer Bernstein's music score, which is oddly reminiscent of something like he would do for Bolero, for the Cannon Group a couple years later. But I mean, here's the thing: the scenery in this movie is nice. There's no denying that this movie is lovely to look at, but unfortunately, the story is so non-existent. And, the twist, which it's not really a twist. I mean, we kind of figure it out a little too early. And I'm just going to throw it out there right now because we don't really, we don't find out until the halfway mark. But I just have to throw it out there. Okay. This movie involves incest. Okay, this is a movie about incest. Sean Connery plays a renowned doctor, and he is married, but this woman that he's with is not his wife. As a matter of fact, this is his niece, and so yes, he is having an affair with his niece in this movie, which she is apparently all okay with. I mean, she doesn't have any objection to this whatsoever. See, that's a beautiful shot right there. That I mean, early on, I said to myself, you know what? There's some really lovely shots of Switzerland in this movie. And oddly enough, wasn't Switzerland the country where he and Indiana Jones flew out of in the plane in Last Crusade? Maybe I don't really remember, but look, I mean, there's obviously some very very nice shots of Switzerland and the surrounding countryside. But Sean Connery and his quote unquote wife, they're just basically going up to this lodge to get away for a while and to do some mountain climbing. And we're going to meet some actors here in almost quick succession. And they're going to be disappearing from the screen almost as soon as we meet them. But the plot for what it is, I mean, little as it is, it basically revolves around three people: Sean Connery, Betsy Brantley, they're both dancing right now, and Lambert Wilson, who is going to come into the story a little bit later as a guide. And let's just say that, he starts liking Betsy Brantley and vice versa. And so there's this conflict. But at the same time, this movie lacks it completely lacks any kind of chemistry between Connery and Brantley. There's no electricity. There's no like real genuine passion, you know, anywhere in this movie. And that's the thing is this is what really hurts this movie is that we don't care about these people. They're not likable enough and they're not endearing enough for us to get attached to get glued to. Obviously, Connery's character is rather dubious and rather shameful. But he's just basically acting like a guy. Well, look, she just fell into my arms. What do you expect me to do? And we'll find that later later on in the flashbacks, because there's several flashbacks in this movie that don't really add anything. They don't really bring out anything from any of these characters, and it's such a shame because, well, the thing is that Fred Zinnemann was a talented director. No denying that. I mean, he directed a score of good or great movies, and this is it's certainly not his least one. But look, I mean, that's the thing. You follow them outside, you see the Alps and everything. Sure, it's beautiful. But then again, you can get the same, thing by either flying there and seeing it for yourself, or just look at a YouTube video. You'll get a lot more out of that. But here's the thing also is that the mountain climbing sequences are actually really good. And unfortunately, but the thing is, if you're into mountain climbing or into mountain climbing movies, which by the way, they're kind of a rarity, honestly, I don't know if you're going to like this. I mean, this is it feels like a masterpiece theater movie made for PBS. And for somebody like Fred Zinnemann, that is such a, I know that sounds harsh, but I can't help it. This movie is, in terms of emotion, in terms of character, it's completely empty. It's completely empty, and it doesn't really register. That's why nobody saw it. Nobody cared. I mean, Sean Connery wasn't a big enough star to bring in audiences for this movie, and Betsy Brantley and Lambert Wilson, they were amateurs. They had I mean, they did their best, I guess, but here again, none of these people are all that likable. They're just not all that likable at all. I mean, uh, and of course, we learn so little about them that it almost becomes this type of enterprise. Well, why should we care? Why? I mean, Fred Zinnemann obviously cared. He had a nostalgic connection that he wanted to tap into with his youth. When this movie bombed, he didn't make another movie. I think he was actually kind of crushed by the extremely negative reaction, which he actually labeled as vicious. He labeled it as a very vicious reaction to this movie. Um, and this was quoting Fred Zinnemann himself. I'm not saying it was a good picture because it wasn't, but there was a degree of viciousness in the reviews. The pleasure some people took in tearing down the film really hurt. And look, if this was really just about his, if this was really just about him, playing with nostalgia and just wanting to go back and remember the mountain films of his youth and make something in that vein, fine. But the thing is that this movie was also plagued with production problems that I will get into later, which, to be perfectly honest, makes me feel a little bit for Fred Zinnemann. Even though this movie is not good, what he went through to make this film, I think, deserves a little bit more respect. Now, these two actresses right here, the Pierce sisters, as they are known in the credits, are Anna Massey with the white hair and Sheila Reed on the left, sitting on the left side of the table. And of course, they notice Betsy Brantley coming in, and they're obviously very shocked. If you recognize Anna Massey, she was in Frenzy. She was in the Alfred Hitchcock film Frenzy, which I did a commentary on just a few months ago. And she passed away in 2011. And aside from Frenzy, she also was in Peeping Tom, The Trip to Biarritz, Bunny Lake is Missing, David Copperfield, Wicked Women, A Doll's House, Mansfield Park, 1983, A Tale of Two Cities, 1989, Inspector Morse, and Doctor Who. She played Miss Pollard in some episodes of Doctor Who. She played Mrs. Bedwin in a television miniseries version of Oliver Twist. And she was also Miss Prism in the 2002 version of The Importance of Being Earnest. And we are only going to see Anna Massey and her on-screen sister Sheila Reed for one other scene. And when that scene comes up, I'll talk about Sheila Reed. But here's Lambert Wilson. And I honestly thought I had recognized this guy from somewhere before. For some reason, okay, because I'm not a big fan of the Matrix movies. But apparently, that's what he's best known for, is as the Moravian, whatever. Yeah, he's in Reloaded, he's in Revolutions, and he's also in Matrix Resurrections. I thought I recognized him from somebody else, from something else, but apparently I didn't. He made his film debut in Fred Zinnemann's previous film, Julia. And then in 1979, he was in Lady Oscar, directed by Jacques Demy, From Hell to Victory, but directed by Umberto Lenzi. And then in 1981, he did a movie for George Cossender called Chanel Solitaire. This was actually his sixth movie, although in the credits it curiously says introducing Lambert Wilson, which doesn't make much sense. But he was also in La Boom 2, Rendezvous, The Possessed, 1988. Jefferson in Paris, he played Marquis de Lafayette in Jefferson in Paris with Nick Nolte as Tom Jefferson. And then, of course, in 2003, he played the Moravian, whatever, I don't know how to pronounce The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, and he was also in Resurrections, which just came out a couple of years ago. His last movie was 2022's Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, where he played Marquis de Chassaing, and he co-starred in that movie with Isabella Huppert and Leslie Manville. That was his last movie, but he's still working. He's actually going to be playing Claudius in a new version of Hamlet called Hamlet Revenant. I want to say hi to Rob Gasper real quick. Hello, Stone. Time Bandits was a bright spot for him, but that wasn't a starring role. Yeah, that's true. But like I said, this was made certainly at the very nadir of his career. Yeah, so that's what Lambert Wilson has been in. And to be honest, I found his performance here rather cold. I mean, considering the fact that he's supposed to be charming and almost, sweeping Betsy Brantley off her feet. The truth is he just comes off really cold in this movie. He comes off as cold as the Alps themselves. It's just, I don't know if it was just due to his inexperience, but Fred Zinnemann cast him in Julia. So he obviously saw something in the guy, but in this particular movie, dead weight. Absolute dead weight. I mean, and Connery, this is probably the most uninteresting Connery performance I've ever witnessed. And he's made some bad movies. Let's be honest here. He's made some bad ones. This one is not a bad movie, but at the same time, it just feels like he's just going to Switzerland for a vacation, and he's making a movie at the same time. This feels like a vacation movie for him. It he doesn't here again the writing is partly the problem here, because he doesn't have much of a character aside from a doctor who is having an affair with his niece. And the guy that wrote this, by the way, is a screenwriter by the name of Michael Austin. He didn't really do much after this, but the story this is based on is called Maiden Maiden, with one maiden obviously going for Betsy Brantley, and the other maiden being the Alps, or the mountain, basically. Now, and I tried to find the short story to read, but it's actually part of a series of short stories by Kay Boyle. And she was a novelist, short story writer, educator, and political activist. And she also won a Guggenheim Fellow and O. Henry Award winner for this writing. And this story, Maiden Maiden, was like a collection of like 30 stories or something like that. But apparently Fred Zinnemann read it in the late 40s. He was taken aback by it and thought, after Julia was such a massive success, won, Oscars, like, I mean, of course, a lot of his films won awards, not just Oscars, but Golden Globes and stuff. But this movie, he really just genuinely wanted to do this movie based on this little short story. And, but here's the thing, where's the passion? See, and that's the thing. I mean, you don't really get any passion with the characters, but I don't get any passion from the director either. I'm not sure exactly why he felt that this might have been a commercial film. I mean, look, when you're dealing with incest, you're limiting your audience right there. And Sean Connery or no Sean Connery, I mean, you're automatically limiting your audience. The funny thing is, I did a commentary on another Lad Company movie rather recently called Tragedy of a Ridiculous Man, directed by Bernardo Bertolucci. And in 1979, 3 years before this movie came out, he made a movie about incest called La Luna, with what's her name, from an unmarried woman, but that was also a bomb. So, I mean, even though these directors thought that they were, being a little racy and everything with these themes, I mean, I don't think Fred Zinnemann was trying to shock people, though. I here again, I got to give Fred Zinnemann a little bit of credit here. I don't think he was trying to shock people. I don't think that he was trying to make a tasteless movie. But at the same time, there's just nothing to grab onto. It's just, every scene plays out with, very little, very little emoting. I mean, all these characters, even the ones right here who are the family members here. This is actually his wife here on the left, and I believe the woman over there in the back who's speaking is her mother. And so, as for the rest of the cast that we have on here on screen, Sarah Meredith, who plays the wife, is played by Jennifer Hillary, who passed away in 2008. She was a British actress of stage, film, and television. Her first acclaimed stage performance was as Millie in Henry James' The Wings of the Dove, which marked her debut at the West End. And later in life, she founded a flower arranging business. In 2001, she provided the floral arrangements for actor Michael Williams' memorial service at Covent Garden. Now, the only other movies that she's made, aside from 5 Days, One Summer, include Beckett, where she played a peasant's daughter. That was a huge film, nominated for 12 Oscars. Richard Burton, Peter O'Toole. I don't think I've ever seen it, to be perfectly honest. She was also in The Heroes of Telemark, 1965, The Idol, 66, One Brief Summer, 1971, North Sea Hijack, or also known as Folks, with Roger Moore, 5 Days, One Summer, obviously. And then the last movie she made was Slipstream. Slipstream was the only other directorial effort by Steven Lisberger, who made Tron the same year as 5 Days, One Summer. And it's arguably a lot better. And Tron's arguably a lot better than this. So, and the lady who played her mother, I think we're going to see those. I think we're going to see the family members again one more time. I don't really remember, to be honestly, but her mother is played by Isabel Dean, and she was born in 1918, passed in 1997 at the age of 79. She did a lot of radio. She studied painting at the Birmingham Art School. She joined the Cheltenham Repertory Company as a scenic artist, and she appeared on stage in London in Agatha Christie's Peril at N House in 1940. Her other films, aside from 5 Days, One Summer, which was her last one, by the way, this was her last movie. She was also in Passionate Friends, 1949, The Story of Gilbert and Sullivan, Twice Upon a Time, 1953, which, if I'm not mistaken, that was the movie that was eventually remade as The Parent Trap. Yes, it was. Yeah, it was actually the original Parent Trap was actually based on this 1953 German movie called Twice Upon a Time, which I've never seen. She was also in Virgin Island, Light in the Piazza, High Wind in Jamaica, The Bawdy Adventures of Tom Jones with Joan Collins. Yeah, a real classic there. And then she was in Rough Cut with Burt Reynolds. And then finally, this was her last movie, 5 Days, One Summer. Now, so we're probably going to only see the family members again one more time. So here we have our three principals. You know, they're finally together. Lambert Wilson is going to be the guide for Connery and Brantley. And like I said, this we're already at the 25-minute mark. We're at the 25-minute mark, and believe me when I say this second act is such a stretch. I mean, that's the thing. After watching this movie, I figured, you know what? I've never been mountain climbing before, but I think I'd rather go mountain climbing myself in the Swiss Alps than see this movie again. See, I mean, that's the thing. We got scenes of them just walking. Like, why? I mean, look, here's the funny. You want to know the irony? Fred Zinnemann actually deleted 11 minutes of footage so that when he premiered it on television 3 or 4 years later, it wasn't 108 minutes. It was only 97 minutes. I'm not sure it would have played even better at 97 minutes. I mean, I think 87 minutes would have been more appropriate. I mean, if you're going to do a movie that feels like a poem, the way to do it, the quintessential example to me is something like The Man in the Moon, which was Reese Witherspoon's first film that she made in 1991. And that was actually based on one woman's experiences. One woman's experiences growing up in Louisiana in the 1950s. You know, she listened to Elvis and everything. And of course, it was about her falling in love the first time with a boy. Actually, it's the guy from, well, not Mallrats, but Dazed and Confused. That guy, he was in The Man in the Moon. And that movie, which is, you know, oh, it's so good. I mean, it's directed by Robert Mulligan, who also did To Kill a Mockingbird. It's presented as a poetic piece. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's actually quite short. And here again, it's a nostalgia piece that gets to the point. These two sisters, they fall in love with the same boy. I'm not going to say what happens, obviously, but let's just say, like I said, it's 99 minutes and it keeps everything, gentle, but at the same time, you're still entranced by it. And here again, that's mostly due to the writing and the characters. Here, there's so little dialogue throughout this movie. We don't really get to know these people. And that's the thing. There's so many issues in terms of, Fred Zinnemann wanting us to care about this movie. There's so many issues with it. I mean, here again, if you're a mountain climber or if you're a fan of mountain climbing movies, you might get a little bit more out of this than the average person, which I know sounds weird because I know the love story is basically almost front and center here. And Sean Connery, he just keeps on making these looks, and we know pretty much what he's thinking. It's all too obvious. He's thinking, okay, obviously, she may meet a guy that she really likes, and where she doesn't have to be part of an incestuous relationship anymore. So why not this guy? I mean, and that's why Sean Connery, just like he keeps looking between the two of them, like, okay, you guys are not trying to, click eyes at each other when I'm not looking, right? And the mountain climbing sequences later in the movie are even better than this. I mean, there's one near the climax. There's one particular shot near the climax, which is actually quite breathtaking. But then again, I mean, let's consider other mountain climbing movies compared to this. I mean, there's Cliffhanger, which I think is a genuine action classic, one of Stallone's best. Recently, I actually watched Everest, which came out a few years ago, and it was about the Everest team that went up there, and like one of them had ended up with frostbite all over his face, and another guy died when he was trying to once in a lifetime get to the top of the mountain, and whatever. Everest was pretty good. I actually was deeply ingrained in these climbers and their ultimate pursuit. And then in 1991, we had a movie called K9, which wasn't bad, but nobody saw it. And then how can we forget Vertical Limit, which in many ways is actually an entertaining movie. So, there are shots like this which are actually quite breathtaking. A little foggy, a little. Let's talk about the cinematographer. Let's get the cinematographer out of the way real quick. See who shot this. Again, his name is Giuseppe Rotuno. Giuseppe Rotuno, an Italian cinematographer, just passed away last year at the age of 97. Yeah. So, I mean, it's actually, I think, very fitting that, this, the best moments in this movie are the mountain climbing sequences. And that all goes to Giuseppe Rotuno. Although once I reveal some of the other, some of the production problems this movie had, I think he deserves even a lot more credit than that. But he passed away at 97 last year in 2021. Sometimes credited as Peppino Rotuno, he was director of photography on 8 films by Federico Fellini. He collaborated with several celebrated Italian directors, including Vittorio De Sica, Luchino Visconti, and Fellini. He also served as the director of photography for Julia and Julia in 1987, first feature shot using high-definition television taping technique and then transferred to 35mm film. He was nominated for the Academy Award only once for Best Cinematography for All That Jazz, the Bob Fosse classic, maybe his best movie. I mean, and it won 7 Silver Ribbon Awards for All That Jazz. He was also the first non-American member admitted to the American Society of Cinematographers in 1966. Yeah. And among the other films that he shot, they include, and he started out in the mid-1950s. I mean, he shot the Monte Carlo Story, White Nights, Anna of Brooklyn, The Naked Maha, 5 Branded Women, The Angel Wore Red, Boccaccio 70, The Witches 1967, The Stranger, based on the Albert Camus novel 1967, Carnal Knowledge with Jack Nicholson, Man of La Mancha, the infamous musical version, which came out 50 years ago, that I am not going to do a 50th anniversary commentary. Needless to say, I'm not going to sit through Man of La Mancha, even for the biggest Man of La Mancha fan out there. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. But Rotuno also shot Armacord, The Beast, 1974, A Night Full of Rain, Popeye. He shot Popeye with Robin Williams. Now, that's one of my favorites. And he also shot American Dream. Oh, he shot American Dreamer. That's another one of my favorites. Red Sonja, Rent-A-Cop, Haunted Summer, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. I don't know how to pronounce that. Forgive me. The Bachelor. He also shot Regarding Henry with Harrison Ford. Wolf with Jack Nicholson. Sabrina. And his very last movie was Marcello Mastroianni, I Remember, from 1996, 7. And he also did the Stendhal Syndrome and The Night and the Moment. So he's directed some very recognizable films. I mean, some films for Jack Nicholson, a couple others for Robin Williams. Um, and like I said, I mean, his photography is basically the finest thing about this movie, hands down. I mean, none of the performances are great. Needless to say, the writing isn't great. The director, I don't know if Fred Zinnemann was sleeping during some of this movie. Grandpa Fred, man, he just okay. So let's get into Fred Zinnemann now, because here again, this was his very last movie, absolutely, destroyed by the critics, despite the fact that he had a very beloved reputation. Okay, he was born in Austria-Hungary, now Poland, in 1907. And he was among the first directors to insist on using authentic locations and for mixing stars with civilians to give his films more realism. Within the film industry, he was considered a maverick for taking risks and thereby creating unique films, with many of his stories being dramas about lone and principled individuals tested by tragic events. According to one historian, Zinnemann's style demonstrated his sense of, quote, psychological realism and his apparent determination to make worthwhile pictures that are nevertheless highly entertaining. He actually started out in the 1930s, but his big break came in 1948 with The Search. That was really his big break, because Montgomery Clift, and it was nominated for 4 Academy Award nominations and actually won one. It actually won for Ivan Jandal got a special Juvenile Academy Award for this movie. And Clint Eastwood has stated that Montgomery Clift's performance in that film had a great influence on his career. Now, after that, he made a movie called The Men. And I just saw The Men for the first time very, very recently. And it's set in a paraplegic ward in a VA hospital, actually. Marlon Brando's debut performance. And it's powerful as hell. I mean, he's suffering from depression and impaired self-concept. He struggles to accept his disability and his need to accept care from others, including from his fiancee/wife, played by Teresa Wright. Now, as much as I love Teresa Wright, I mean, she's in my favorite movie of all time, Best Years of Our Lives. And she also did, she won the Academy Award for Mrs. Miniver, for William Wyler as well. She's a little old. She's a little old for this role. I mean, I still love her, but I did think that she was just a tad older than she should have been for The Men. And The Men is really remembered for Marlon Brando, in 1951, he made his next movie was called Teresa, which wasn't a big hit, a romantic drama film starring Pierre Engel and John Erickson, and nominated for an Academy Award for Best Story. And the next film he made was actually High Noon. And High Noon is, here again, it's considered one of the legendary Westerns. It occurs in real time. We see a lot of clocks throughout High Noon. And it was selected by, and it's basically, Gary Cooper has to have a showdown with somebody in town at a certain time, like within 80 minutes. And we actually see the clocks all throughout, all filmed in real time. It was selected by the Library of Congress as one of the first 25 films for preservation in the United States National Film Registry in 1989. And a lot of people felt it should have won Best Picture over The Greatest Show on Earth, which was directed by, I was about to say D.W. Griffith. I know that's, DeMille, Cecil B. DeMille. I knew it was going to pop in my head eventually. Cecil B. DeMille, they wanted to give him an Oscar because they felt like this was his last chance to win, even though he made the much better Ten Commandments only 4 years later. But yeah, High Noon did not win. High Noon did not win Best Picture. An iconic film whose story has been partly or completely repeated in later film productions. Outland, with Sean Connery being one of the most enjoyable. And so after High Noon, he also did a movie called The Member of the Wedding. Now, I actually reviewed The Member of the Wedding several years ago when I wrote for DVDverdict.com. And it's based on a book by Carson McCullers, which I've actually read. Carson McCullers, she also wrote... she wrote several books I read. I mean, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, which was later made into an excellent movie in 1968. And then The Member of the Wedding is basically about a young girl's feelings at her brother's wedding. And it made a successful Broadway run in 1950 to 1951. So Fred Zinnemann directed that pretty much right after High Noon. And then after The Member of the Wedding, he would direct ultimately a film that got 13 Oscar nominations and 8 wins. And yes, that would happen to be From Here to Eternity. Probably Fred Zinnemann's most beloved movie, starring Montgomery Clift and Burt Lancaster, Deborah Kerr, Frank Sinatra, and Donna Reed. And it's based on a 1951 novel of the same name by Daniel Taradash, and it deals with the tribulations of 3 Army soldiers, Burt Lancaster, Montgomery Clift, and Frank Sinatra, stationed on Hawaii in the months leading up to the attack on Pearl Harbor. And it's most famous for that beach sequence where we see I don't remember if it was Clift or Lancaster, but I think it was Lancaster, yeah. And basically, he's like literally making out with Deborah Kerr on the beach as the waves come up. I mean, very, very sensual scene for the time. And it's ultimately what From Here to Eternity is remembered for. So after that that four punch of The Men, High Noon, Member of the Wedding, and From Here to Eternity, Fred Zinnemann would then make a musical. And that musical was, of course, Oklahoma, based on the Rodgers and Hammerstein show. And I've seen Oklahoma before. It's pretty good for what it is. I'm not the biggest Rodgers and Hammerstein fan in the world. But, Oklahoma, it's a fine musical. It's a fine musical. But if you want something even better, especially if you're not a musical fan, check out this movie that Fred Zinnemann directed in 1957 called A Hatful of Rain. This was another movie I watched in preparation for this commentary because I figured, well, if I'm going to be talking about Fred Zinnemann's last film, I might as well watch some of his other films and talk about them. A Hatful of Rain is about a young married man, played by Don Murray, with a secret morphine addiction. And it's based on a 1955 Broadway play of the same name. It also stars Eva Marie Saint, who, of course, was later in Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest. And it also had Anthony Franciosa, Lloyd Nolan, and Henry Silva, who, as we know, just passed away at the age of 95. He was, he died on September 14th. But yeah, he was in this little movie called Hatful of Rain. Franciosa was nominated for the Best Actor Oscar. Really good little film. Really good little film. It's available on YouTube if you want to watch it for free. Highly recommend it. Definitely one of Fred Zinnemann's best films. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times hailed this production's, quote, emotional nakedness in depiction of addiction and its terrible costs. A Hatful of Rain is a tremendously taut and true description of human agony and shame, of solitude and frustration, and the piteousness of tangled love. Highly recommend that movie. Hatful of Rain, directed by Fred Zinnemann. After that, he made The Nun Story, 1959, with Audrey Hepburn. Never seen that one. And the movie is 152 minutes. I don't know if I could, even Audrey Hepburn, I don't know if I could watch 2.5 hours of her as a nun. But in 1960, Fred Zinnemann made The Sundowners, starring Deborah Kerr and Robert Mitchum and Peter Ustinov. Tells the story of a 1920s Australian outback family torn between the father's desires to continue his nomadic sheep herding ways and the wife's and son's desire to settle down in one place. After the Sundowners, he did 4 more movies before 5 Days, One Summer. He actually, 1, 2, 3. He made 24 films. After Sundowners, he made Behold a Pale Horse, one of his few films that wasn't nominated for anything. And then he did A Man for All Seasons, which of course won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, starring Paul Scofield, Wendy Hiller, Leo McKern, Orson Welles, Robert Shaw, and Susanna York. I think I've seen it only one time. I probably should see it again sometime in my life. The Day of the Jackal, he made that after Man for All Seasons. And then he did Julia in 1977, which of course was controversial for the Best Actress win because Vanessa Redgrave, the Jewish Defense League, objected to her nomination because she had narrated and helped fund a documentary entitled The Palestinian, which supported a Palestinian state. Ooh. They also picketed the Oscar ceremony. So Julia was kind of a controversial movie, and to be perfectly honest, nobody talks about Julia anymore. I don't think it's even available on Blu-ray, to be perfectly honest. Oh, it was released by Twilight Time. Yeah, there was a limited edition that was released by Twilight Time. You can still get it for $60 if you really want it, but it's not considered real high regard today. But anyway, so Fred Zinnemann, this was his last film. This was his very last film, 5 Days, One Summer, and not his worst by a long shot, but definitely one of his weakest. Now, we have to get into the production of this movie because this movie does have some stories that need to be shared, which here again, it's not a great movie, and yet at the same time, I feel the need to give Fred Zinnemann a little bit of respect for what he went through to make this movie. Now, but to start off with, let's start with Sean Connery because interestingly enough, Sir Sean Connery once described this movie's location work as, quote, the most audacious piece of filmmaking I've ever been involved in. It was film production at the point of pioneering. Okay. Connery once recounted the worst moment he experienced while making this movie. He had to make a 300-meter, 328-yard walk alone down a glacier known to be laden with crevices, hidden by a fresh snowfall, and without safety markers. The marker poles were present during rehearsals, but were not there during filming, as they would be seen in the shot, obviously. Connery said, quote, inches on either side of the path, there were 90-foot caverns. I could hear the sound of ice moving underneath me, and behind me in the peaks, shifting all the time. That's the loneliest walk I've ever taken. Mm-hmm. According to Fred Zinnemann, when he made this movie, quote, I love the feeling of one had in those old days of going to a place that was absolutely still. The silence, the feeling of majesty, the mystery. You know what? I agree with that. I can see where he's coming from with that, definitely. Head mountaineer guide Andrea Florinet's advice and warning to the cast and crew was, quote, if you fall, you must at all costs try to keep awake. Because if you sleep, you will never wake up again. And after watching Everest, I can definitely see where she's coming from. Yeah, never fall asleep when you're out there. If you fall, make sure you're awake. Just make sure you're awake. The source short story Maiden by Kay Boyle was first read by producer and director Fred Zinnemann about 30 to 40 years earlier. He said, quote, a story which has haunted you for so long has done so for very good reason. I have never been able to get the shape of the tale from my mind. The coming together of this haunted love affair amidst the purity of the Alps has sure and certain correspondences for me. Reportedly, Fred Zinnemann's idea of happiness was, according to him, quote, to sit on top of the Matterhorn, mountain of the Alps, wondering how to get down. The movie was shot on location in the Alps without visual tricks or stand-ins, according to WarnerArchive.com. If you really want 5 Days, One Summer on DVD, just go to Warner Archive. Prior to principal photography, cast and crew trained for several weeks to familiarize themselves with climactic conditions, early mountaineering equipment, and 1930s climbing techniques. I was going to say real quick that I think one of Zinnemann's inspirations for this was Leni Riefenstahl, of all people. Now, I know people, when they think of Leni Riefenstahl, they think Triumph of the Will, and all that stuff. Look, before she made Triumph of the Will, she was apolitical. On top of all that, not only did she not give a damn about politics, but she loved to mountain climb. She had started out as a dancer in the early 1920s, and then she got into mountain climbing, and then she eventually made movies about mountain climbing. And they were known as these early 1930s, well, late 20s, early 30s German mountaineering films. In fact, it was a movie called The Blue Light, which Adolf Hitler saw and said, I want Leni Riefenstahl to make my documentary, Triumph of the Will, and whatnot. And look, I understand this is not a Leni Riefenstahl movie, but let me just say, look, I watched Triumph of the Will in college, okay? It was an unforgettable experience, to say the least. And let's put it this way. I think that Leni Riefenstahl should be exonerated for making that movie, because she was making a movie that was essentially in real time. And she considered what she made was a documentary. But of course, it's considered one of the most infamous propaganda movies of all time. Whether she was naive or not, we'll never know. But I don't think that she deserves the hate and the chastising that she has received. Because I've read all about Leni Riefenstahl. I know that she wasn't, she had nothing against the Jews. She was apolitical, and she was into mountain climbing. Well, those mountain climbing films is what Fred Zinnemann is kind of channeling with 5 Days, One Summer. So it's presented as a kind of folk tale set in Swiss Alps, while at the same time being based on this short story. Executive producer Peter Beale and producer and director Fred Zinnemann recruited Swiss Alps alpine shepherds who were used to extreme cold mountain peak weather and landscape conditions to assist with the production of this movie, which included preparing daily set locations prior to sunrise and the 7 a.m. arrival of director Zinnemann. Betsy Brantley was discovered by Fred Zinnemann in London, performing nightly in a stage production of the American musical The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. In London? I don't know what he saw in Betsy Brantley to consider her for this role, but okay. But she did have some previous experience in mountaineering, having done some climbing in the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina. Well, there you go. The movie takes its mood from the mystery and grandeur of the mountains themselves. Several weeks were spent prior to principal photography scouting locations on a location recce, where many exotic mountain locales were discovered unspoiled by mankind, or what producer-director Fred Zinnemann called the haste and pressure of modern climbing. A late July 1981 edition of the newspaper The Swiss Observer reported that production crew had found in the ice of the Swiss Alps the preserved... Oh, yes, that's right. This just came into my head. And I believe we just had the scene. We literally just saw the scene right there. But they actually did find a preserved body of a frozen man who had been missing for approximately 31 years. In 1951, a man went up into the Swiss Alps, never came down. He was frozen to death. While they were making this movie, they found this guy. And Fred Zinnemann, actually did this whole scene in the movie where his widow would come to pay her final respects to finally seeing what happened to her man when he got lost in the mountains. So they actually found him. They actually found a man frozen in ice for 30 years. So the problems which plagued the production, and this is where, like I said, I mean, I don't like this movie, and yet I got to give Fred Zinnemann a little bit of respect. According to a home video sleeve, notes for this movie, quote, included electrical storms, sudden thaws, helicopter evacuations, sickness, injury, and high elevation extremes of cold and heat. The jacket cover text added that, quote, every danger was met head on by the production. According to Lee Pfeiffer at cinemametro.com, this movie, quote, has been likened to the German mountain romances that were enormously popular in pre-World War II Germany. Here again, going back to Leni Riefenstahl. These films were known to have skimpy plots, but magnificent scenery. Yeah. The November-December 1982 issue of the U.S. magazine Coming Attractions reported production problems on this movie included pre-dawn starts, below zero temperatures, treacherous locations, constant pressure, and danger. People magazine reported in their November 22nd, 1982 issue, quote, to make this film set high in the Swiss Alps near St. Moritz, director Fred Zinnemann shot in caves and crevices during avalanches, on glaciers and sheer rock walls, in numbing temperatures at breathtaking altitudes, and from pitching helicopters. A crew member in this movie's catering department suffered a major injury during the production of the movie, had to leave the shoot and return home. The production crew size for the Switzerland location shoot totaled to around 75 people. And the closing credits declare this movie was filmed on location in Switzerland and Great Britain in Lee and Shepperton Studios, London, England, by the Ladd Company. Lambert Wilson was unable to participate in the pre-filming climbing training due to contractual stage performance commitments in France, and as such practiced climbing on weekends in Chamonix in the French Alps. Let's see. I think that's Sigourney Weaver, of all people, lobbied for the role of Kate. At that time, she had only been in a couple of movies. I mean, Woody Allen's Annie Hall, where you could barely recognize her in Long Shot, and then also Eyewitness with William Hurt. But she was also an Alien by this time, so I don't know why. I don't know why Fred Zinnemann decided not to cast her. I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think of a Sean Connery, Sigourney Weaver incest relationship? What do you all think of that? Sir Sean Connery was known for playing James Bond. After You Only Live Twice, he quit the franchise, though he later returned at different stages to make 2 more Bond movies, one official, one unofficial. Ironically, the next movie in the Bond franchise after Connery left in the 60s was On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which, like this movie, was also filmed in the Swiss Alps and also had a dramatic romantic storyline. Betsy Brantley's first movie, by the way, was Shock Treatment, which we're going to talk about Betsy Brantley later. She's the one cast member of the 3 I still haven't talked about, really. But Alexander's Ragtime Band, the classic Irving Berlin song, is played during the dance sequence at the hotel, but the track is not billed in the movie's closing credits. Ooh. Cover shoots and changing filming locations were frequently utilized during principal photography due to frequently changing weather conditions, which necessarily caused the changing of shooting sites. I think that's about it as far as this is concerned. Okay, so Betsy Brantley, who plays Sean Connery's niece in this movie, So her first film was actually the sequel to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which was Shock Treatment. After that, she did The Fourth Protocol with Pierce Brosnan, which was actually kind of a, Pierce Brosnan did not get the Bond role at that time, but he did do this movie with Michael Caine. It's like this British secret spy movie. The only thing I remember from Fourth Protocol is when he was having sex with Joanna Cassidy, who was later in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Yeah, that's the only thing I remember from the Fourth Protocol. Now, Betsy Brantley also played the mother in The Princess Bride. She's been in some big movies. She also played Jessica's performance model in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Yeah. Havana with Robert Redford, which was also a bomb. Schizopolis played Mrs. Munson. She was in Washington Square, based on The Heiress by Henry James, played Miss Montgomery. She was also in Mercury Rising with with Bruce Willis. She played special ed teacher number 2. And then she was also in Deep Impact, which was the Steven Spielberg executive produced end of the world movie with the meteor. Way better than Armageddon. Way better than Armageddon, I think. She was also in Double Jeopardy as a prosecutor, the movie with Tommy Lee Jones and Ashley Judd. Now, the last movie she did is a movie called Kimmy with Zoe Kravitz. It just came out this year. It came out in February of 2022. And even though it was directed by Steven Soderbergh and written produced by David Koepp, and even though the star of the film was Zoe Kravitz, Betsy Brantley gave the voice of Kimmy in the movie. So she actually gave the voice for the titular character in that movie. In terms of television, she's also done Sherlock Holmes, Beauty and the Beast, Tour of Duty, Touched by an Angel, NYPD Blue, and Chicago Hope. Oh, and here are the sisters again. No. These are the family members. Yeah, the sisters that I pointed out earlier. They basically left the movie right after the first climb, and we never see them again. I mean, that's what I'm saying is that we all the supporting characters, we meet them for one scene, and they may come back for one scene more, but then we never see them again. And it's almost it's almost like, why even bother including them? I mean, we need other characters at this lodge, obviously, but I mean, see, look, just shots like that are lovely, but here again, the lovely cinematography is just not enough to save this movie. And even though, like I said, I respect what Fred Zinnemann and what his crew went through as they were making 5 Days, One Summer, I mean, the truth of the matter is, I think this movie is only slightly above Tragedy of a Ridiculous Man, directed by Bernardo Bertolucci. And that, ladies and gentlemen, pretty much sums up everything that I like. Everything about 5 Days, One Summer that I was willing to talk about, because we're coming up on 1 hour and 1 minute, 1 hour and 1 minute, and we still have 48 minutes to go. Like I said, this is a long movie for what it's trying to be, for what it's trying to be, and what Fred Zinnemann was trying to do. Like I said, this should have been 88 minutes. Not even that. I would have voted more for 80 minutes. And here again, you got to get to the point. You got to get to the point with these things. I mean, here we have another dialogue scene where Lambert Wilson, he basically does find out that Sean Connery is her uncle and not her husband. And so, and then of course, later on we have to figure out, well, okay, is she going to end up with this guy, or is she going to stay with Sean Connery? And here again, the question that just comes to my mind is, who cares? I mean, look, Betsy Brantley may be good in other movies, but just look at her right here. She looks like a deer caught in the headlights. I mean, she just doesn't emote. She doesn't emote one single solitary time in this whole movie. Lambert Wilson has the same expression on his face. And Sean Connery just looks like he's relaxing and just not really thinking about acting, but just thinking about, mountain climbing or skiing or whatever he wanted to do while he was in Switzerland. all of these actors, don't bring anything to this movie, anything. And that's the biggest frustration of all. The director might have had his passion. He might have had his nostalgia thing. He wanted to make an ode to his childhood. Yeah. Uh, these actors just don't bring anything. They don't bring anything to this movie. And thus it's rather pointless to watch these confrontations and everything. I mean, they're just really, really pointless. And on top of all that, this is a very quiet movie. I mean, here again, very little dialogue. A lot of the story depends on reaction a lot of the story depends on the characters' reactions. And unfortunately, there's just not enough compelling underneath the surface or even above the surface for us to care. Like I said, I mean, unless you're a Fred Zinnemann completist or a Connery completist for that matter, but the only people I think I can recommend this to are basically mountain climbers. And who knows? I mean, if they like mountain climbing movies and then they love those like Leni Riefenstahl German mountain romances of the early 30s, yeah, they would probably get something out of this. But aside from that, I just think this movie is largely a waste of time. Largely a waste of time. Oh yeah, and this was also one of the first movies where Connery doesn't wear a toupee. Because, well, you see, a lot of people complain about his appearance in Diamonds Are Forever. He just punched Betsy Brantley here. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people complain about his appearance in Diamonds Are Forever because he's not he wasn't the guy in Dr. No anymore. He was a bit pudgy, a bit, and he gambled all the time in Vegas when he was making Diamonds Are Forever. He just spent basically the entire time gambling late at night, and of course he had affairs with both of his leading ladies. I highly doubt he was having an affair with Betsy Brantley during this movie. Ixnay on Sigourney in this. She's outstanding, of course, but would have regretted doing it in the long run. Yeah, I don't know why she was lobbying hard for this role. There's nothing to the role. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, I just don't know if I can see Sean Connery and Sigourney Weaver, kiss. I don't think I can see them doing that. I mean, maybe she just wanted to work with Sean Connery. I don't know. I mean, that's altogether possible, but yeah, man. Yeah, Sigourney Weaver would have been a very, very odd choice for this role. Mm. 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 Join some more of my sparkling French market lemonade from Trader Joe's for anybody who's wondering. Mm. So what else is there to talk about 5 Days, One Summer? Actually, there's a couple of other things that I wanted to read here. There's not a lot of reviews on this movie. I mean, actually, there's only 17 at IMDb. Some of them are very strong. Among the few people that actually saw this movie, some of those actually like it. They actually like it. So there's 17 user reviews, and a lot of them, I hate to say it, a lot of them are like 6s and 7s. I mean, yeah, they're 8 out of 10. Zimmerman's Swan Song is beautiful. 10 out of 10, an elegant gem. I wouldn't say that. High five for a final bow. 6 out of 10. Emotional and romantic love story among a middle-aged doctor and a young woman in the gorgeous Swiss Alps. Well, here again, I don't think there's anything romantic about this movie and nothing emotional either. So 10 out of 10. Swiss mountain atmospherics and deftly revealed character twists. No. One person even called it a cinematographic masterpiece. Here again, I don't think so. Disappointing fare from a director and star capable of better. Yeah, 4 out of 10. That's more like it. Confusing but nice mountain climbing sequences. Yeah, 5 out of 10. Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. 4 out of 10 glacial. Yeah. Yeah, this movie is, if there's any word to describe 5 days, one summer, it's glacial. Oh my God, it's so glacial. 4 out of 10. Fred Zinnemann final film is quite visually grand, but its anemic and trite story doesn't match its visuals. I agree. I agree. 6 out of 10, psychological melodrama, and 6 out of 10, worth watching. And that's about it. That's pretty much all the people that actually saw it. Now, there was a couple of reviews I wanted to read here real quick. See, this one, Robert Horton of What a Feeling, because like I said, there's so little written about this movie. Fred Zinnemann's tastefulness has long been a bone of critical contention. He has collected lots of awards over the years from the establishment critics and the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences, but since the early 60s, he's been living with the burden of being considered the most impersonal of the impersonal directors by now in most critical circles. My own limited experience with Zinnemann movies suggests to me that the latter group is probably close to the truth on Zinnemann. High Noon is, well, High Noon. But The Search, Oklahoma, A Hatful of Rain, and A Manful of Seasons are pretty boring. I don't agree with that, with Oklahoma and A Hatful of Rain as being boring. Not that this represents a definitive survey of his career. On the other hand, From Here to Eternity is one of my favorite movies, but it has always seemed to me that the film gets its personality from Montgomery Clift's melancholy hardhead, Robert E. Lee Pruitt, as much as from its director. Anyway, so yeah, and this review was written in 1982. Zinnemann's newest films seem to hold the promise of engaging him more than usual. 5 Days, One Summer is set in the time of his youth, around in the mountains that held fascination for the Austrian-born Zinnemann. Not that literally autobiographical qualities have anything to do with how personal a film is, but it was a promising sign. The movie's about a doctor mountaineer who escorts his much younger lover to a resort in the mountains of Switzerland. Their troubles. He is a married man. She is his niece. The Swiss mountain climbing guide disapproves and also happens to dig the girl very much. Well, duh. There's not much story here, and Zinnemann doesn't flesh things out or dig too deeply. He does give the story a strange subplot. In the course of hiking, the trio discovers the body of a man who disappeared 40 years earlier, on the night before his wedding. His bride-to-be, never married, is confronted with the corpse, kept in mint condition by the snowpack. She, of course, is an old woman by now. The scene takes place beside a river that is a result of a melting glacier. You can see why Zinnemann wanted this episode in there, even if the strain to integrate it into the plot is too much for the movie. In fact, it's not integrated in. Zinnemann doesn't quite pull it off, and this little bit does not really seem all that mythically haunting or perversely eerie. But that's sort of why I like it. Zinnemann's trying for the mythic and not just quite making is somehow touching. After this point, it's much easier to be sympathetic to the film. Besides that, in the picture's second half, there are a few murky intimations among the people and more sensational mountain climbing. The climbing sequences are spectacular. The last part of the small human drama is played out in the sides of the mountains, and the action is quite breathtaking. The assault on a sheer face of solid ice, carving toe holds on the way up, is astounding. It's an apt visualization of the ultimate Zinnemann situation. Ambiguities put aside, a problem is clearly seen, the solution executed with icy, dogged simplicity. With that, the movie were less muddled, but it's on to the next mountain if Fred Zinnemann thinks it's worth the trip. Well, of course, he never went on another cinematographic mountain. All right, so that's one. There's not many here. There's really not many here at all. Here's another one from 1982 from People magazine. To make this film, set high in the Swiss Alps near St. Moritz, director Fred Zinnemann shot in caves and crevices during avalanches on glaciers and sheer rock walls and numbing temperatures at breathtaking altitudes, and from pitching helicopters. Now, I've already mentioned that, but sure, why not mention it again? Too bad Zinnemann didn't have a better script to go with all the filmmaking heroics. Yes! Now 75, he says he wanted for more than 30 years to make a movie from Kay Boyle's story Maiden. This movie, the realization of that long-deferred ambition, concerns middle-aged Dr. Sean Connery, his mountain climbing guide, played by newcomer Lambert Wilson, and a young woman who loves both men, played by another discovery, Betsy Brantley. Very little happens. Two men climb a mountain, but only one comes down. And while the scenery alone should make this movie special, it is a shot with a postcard sensibility that often makes the mountains seem familiar rather than forbidding. I have to agree with that. I didn't think of that, but yeah, I agree. There is some entertainment, mostly provided by the charm of the two young actors. And Sean Connery plays Sean Connery just fine. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Okay, Justin Reamer over at DVD Talk gave the movie 2.5 stars. Released in 1982, 5 Days, One Summer is the final film from legendary director Fred Zinnemann, a passion project that took Zinnemann decades to get produced, knowing that a bit of trivia makes the film's overall blandness all the more puzzling. Set in the Swiss Alps, where a graying doctor has taken his young bride to go rock climbing, Zinnemann's film is full of gorgeous location photography. It is also highlighted by some truly tense and splendidly executed climbing scenes that were reported all created practically on genuine icy rock faces in the Alps. And like I said, at the climax, we're going to see a lot of the money shots of the mountain climbing, which is, here again, actually pretty good. Unfortunately, the movie isn't just about pretty scenery and treacherous stunts. Instead, there's a limp story of illicit love at the film's soapy center. It turns out that while Dr. Meredith is indeed a married man, he is not married to Kate. When the pair's handsome young guide finds out, he can't resist trying, rather feebly, to wrest Kate away from the old man. Gratuitous flashbacks and oddly muted emotional outbursts ensue. The three leads of the film are all pretty good in their roles, but the chemistry is off. There's no believable aura of love, attraction, or sensuality coming off of them in either of the two couplings. I agree. It doesn't help that the script by Michael Austen keeps its conflict so buried in subtext that it often doesn't feel like there's any conflict at all. Only when the characters have to battle with the elements does it feel like anything is at stake. Considering the generic flavor of the central May-December love story, it's hard to recommend 5 Days, One Summer to anyone but the most undiscerning romance fan. On the other hand, the climbing scenes, especially the climax, literally forced my jaw to open a few times. So it's just as hard to completely write the film off. If you're the kind of viewer who enjoys watching lesser forgotten flicks to sift for superior moments, then I would offer you this film as an excellent opportunity to mine for isolated nuggets of gold. And it is a manufactured on-demand DVD for the Warner Archive DVD. Giuseppe Rotuno's cinematography is soft and diffuse by design, so it's no surprise that this widescreen transfer does not boast very much fine detail. Color and contrast levels fluctuate a little bit, but are mostly pretty solid and earthy looking. Digital noise comes and goes too. No major complaints from the Dolby 2.0 mono audio. Dialogue is clear, ambience is palpable but subtle. Elmer Bernstein's score sounds full but not over the top. No subtitles or captions. His final verdict on this: Fred Zinnemann's final film is too understated to be fully satisfying. Absolutely. But it does feature some tremendously well-executed mountain climbing scenes that are too entertaining to dismiss. If you don't mind slogging through the boring, mushy stuff to get to those scenes, I say rent it. Well, like I said, I don't consider this movie very high on Fred Zinnemann's filmography, Sean Connery's filmography, and certainly not the Lad Company filmography. Certainly not. What else? Time Out says a film which creates drama more out of gesture and nuance than dialogue, and employs a lush setting which overwhelms instead of pointing up the character's emotions. Older married doctor takes his young niece for a dirty week, a dirty week in the Swiss Alps in the 30s. The mountain climbing footage is remarkable, but the plot gathers so little pace that when the girl runs to find out whether the doctor she loves or the handsome young guy she fancies has been killed in an avalanche, our interest in her dilemma is academic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was all that was said about that. And I'm going to quote one more. This is Emmanuel Levy, Cinema 24/7. Fred Zinnemann, the highly acclaimed multi-Oscar winning director, ended his Hollywood career with this disappointingly listless feature. Yes. Zinnemann's 22nd work and 4-decade career is based on the novel Maiden Maiden by Kay Boyle. Well, actually, it's a short story, but whatever. Reportedly, he's been waiting to make it for decades, but based on evidence on screen, it's hard to understand why. Here again, yeah, it's just this was supposed to be a passion project, and you just don't feel an ounce of passion anywhere in this movie. Sean Connery, right after ending his own James Bond career, plays a mature man who travels to the Swiss Alps with Betsy Brantley, a young woman who's half his age. He says she's his wife, but we know better. Most of the tale, which is well shot, is set during a dangerous mountain climb that the couple takes with a young Swiss guide, played by Lambert Wilson, who the girl befriends and confides in. Through flashbacks, Connery unveils the mystery and reveals the true nature of his relationship with his wife. But in the end, since we are not emotionally invested in the tale or its characters, the disclosure is sort of much ado about nothing. 100% agree. 100% agree with Emmanuel Levy on 5 Days, One Summer. And that's about it. That is seriously it. Of all the things out there that is written on 5 Days, One Summer, you pretty much heard it in this commentary. There really isn't much more to say. I mean, and that's what I'm saying here again. This movie just drags. I mean, yes, when we get to that climax, we do get some good mountain climbing stuff, but too little, too late. Too little, too late. I respect Fred Zinnemann for what he went through when he made this movie, but the end result is just nothing to shout about. It's really nothing to shout about at all. Excuse me. Like I said, Grandpa Fred, I think he needed to either he needed another writer or what the case may be, because it is a little disappointing to find out everything the production went through, only to be left with a really mediocre and, as Emmanuel Levy said, a listless film. But that's what we have here. Another nice shot at the Alps, this time at night. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just brooding and lying in bed and just brooding over the whole thing. We just passed the 1 hour 20-minute mark, 1 hour and 20 minutes, and we're about to enter the third act. Finally, the third act of 5 Days, One Summer, and we have approximately 28 minutes left to go. And Sean Connery, Betsy Brantley is about to, basically end the relationship and says she's going to stay here in Switzerland when Sean leaves. But he's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're not going anywhere. You're coming with me. I mean, that's the thing. We don't really even learn how she really feels about this relationship. We don't learn anything. We don't learn anything. We don't feel anything. And that's what makes it all the more. And the scenes where she is, just basically in bed with Sean Connery. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, when you know that she's his niece, it just comes off as really icky. I mean, there's no sex scenes. It's a PG rated movie. There's not even a profanity word to be found anywhere in this movie. I mean, it's a pretty harmless, but also a pretty lifeless movie for the most part, despite the incestuous subplot. Yeah. It's time. Time to go. Time to go. But see, that's what I'm saying. 108 minutes. I knew I wasn't going to make 108 minutes of just constant talking. I'm pretty much burned out now. Uh, and like I said, I put off this commentary for months because I just didn't know what more I was going to say about it. But we got about 25 minutes left to go here. So forgive me if I'm silent more often than not during this third act because I don't know what else to say. I honestly don't know what else to say about 5 Days, One Summer. I mean, I kind of wish I'd found the short story because at least I could talk about that a little bit more, but I wasn't able to find it. So, and that's the thing. The third act is really just punctuated by those mountain climbing sequences, and of course, Sean Connery and Lambert Wilson are going to have a face to face over Brantley and everything, and it just like which man is going to come down alive? Is it going to be Sean Connery or is it going to be Lambert Wilson? And that's this movie's suspense device in the third act, and really it's like okay, take your bets, ladies and gentlemen. Who do you think is going to survive? And I'm pretty sure a lot of you, even if you've never seen this before, can easily guess who's going to survive this little excursion into the Swiss Alps. See, this shot is just taking forever. Yes, the Swiss Alps look nice, but we have to take forever just to get to some money shots here. We really do. Like I said, I mean, the director edited 11 minutes out of this movie, so even he knew it was too long. I mean, that was one of the reasons why it bombed in the theaters. But yeah, here we go. What's funny is that I just saw this video on Mount Everest. Apparently, there's this whole area near the summit called Sun Valley, and it's known as the place where all of these climbers are basically, it's like a death valley almost, where all these climbers who attempted to get up to the top, ended up dying in this area. It's it's real. It's called Sun Valley. It's really interesting. But yeah, see, here's some good stuff right here. These are some really good mountain climbing sequences, which here again, all in service of a passionless story. Now, we got approximately 20, we're at 1 hour, 25 minutes, 1 hour, 25 minutes. We got about 23 minutes left to go. Let me just say, I need to do a preview of all of the Lad Company movies that I have left. This is Lad Company commentary number 14. Okay. This is the 14th one. And I'm going to list the other ones that I plan on doing basically every Sunday night until the end of the year. So we're getting 5 Days, One Summer out of the way right now. On Sunday, October 30th, I will not be doing any Lad Company movies. However, I will be doing a couple of horror movies which were produced by Alan Ladd Jr. And they include Gary Sherman's Deathline, as well as Tam Lin, starring Ava Gardner and Ian McShane. After that, I will be on November 6th. Here again, all Sundays. Sunday, November 6th, I'll be doing Star 80. November 13th will be Purple Hearts. Mike's Murder for November 20th. November 27th will be The Right Stuff. December 1st will be Divine Madness. That was actually the Lad Company's first release, and it's actually a Bette Midler comedy concert. And I'll be doing that on Bette Midler's birthday, actually. December 4th, I'll be doing Ben Affleck's Gone, Baby Gone. December 11th will be Love Child. That may be bumped up. I don't know yet, but it might be bumped up to earlier. Braveheart will be on December 18th. December 24th will be an animated movie called Twice Upon a Time, as well as a movie with Robert Redford, Morgan Freeman, and Jennifer Lopez called An Unfinished Life. So we're going to be doing those two on the 24th. On Christmas Day, I plan on doing Once Upon a Time in America, directed by Sergio Leone. Yes, that is the infamous Lad Company movie, which was butchered domestically. And I'm actually going to be talking about all three versions of Once Upon a Time in America, including the Lad Company edit, including the Lad Company domestic cut, which you could actually watch for free online. And then finally, January 1st will be the last of the Lad Company commentaries with Blade Runner, the theatrical edition from 1982. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Lad Company movies all throughout the rest of the year on Sunday nights. Those all, and I'll be finishing those. But just to let you know, this Sunday night, like I said, it's going to be Deathline, directed by Gary Sherman, which was executive produced by Alan Ladd Jr. And then Alan Ladd Jr. served as a co-producer on Tam Lin, which was directed by Roddy McDowall and starring Ava Gardner and Ian McShane. Really looking forward to doing this one. Really looking forward to that one. Oh. So yeah, I mean, here are some really cool mountain climbing scenes. It's just a shame that it's all the way near the end of the film. We're getting up to 1 hour and 29 minutes. We haven't reached the summit yet. We're not quite there yet. And I don't mean with the characters and everything. We're not quite to the summit yet. But there's a little bit of excitement in these scenes. There is a little bit of excitement. I mean, Sean Connery must have known that he could have easily been injured on this film. He must have known that this was probably a risk. And like I said, he actually cited that he felt nervous doing a lot of these climbing sequences. So the loneliest walk he ever had in his life was during the making of this movie. Yeah. That's really cool. That's a really, really cool shot right there. Really cool shot. It still doesn't save the movie. I mean, it's still a 2-star movie, but it has something. That's what I'm saying. If you're a Sean Connery or a Fred Zinnemann completist, or if you just like mountain climbing, then this is the movie for you. I can't really recommend this for romantics. I can't really recommend it for those who like love stories because, well, here again, I mean, there's just not much to the love triangle here. If you really want to call it a triangle, but it's no passion, no conflict. It's just very, very strained. Gut, Martin. Yeah, so they're going to take a little break up here, and they have a little one-on-one, a little confrontation, knowing exactly that Lambert really likes his quote-unquote wife, and obviously wants to get her out of this ill-advised relationship. But you'll be surprised when you see her from the other side. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm really, really sure. My wife could never have climbed this. I actually forgot this part. Was this a journal or oh? Mallory was here in 1920. Yeah. For anybody who's just come in, like I said, I pretty much exhausted my commentary for 5 days, one summer. We are coming up on 1 hour and 32 minutes. About another 15 seconds here. Yeah, 1 hour, 32 minutes, less than 17 minutes to go. Yeah, doctor, you have no right to her. I said you never make her happy. Yeah, so they have this pretty obvious, confrontation that just it doesn't, it doesn't register. It just doesn't register at all. Not leave my wife. Do you imagine this is a little fling? Yeah, I can't do Connery's Scottish accent either. Here again, not the worst film that Connery and Zinnemann have made, just a weak one, just a weak, forgettable one that just doesn't have much to it. And that's the thing. Fred Zinnemann obviously still had a lot of clout at that time because here again, the Lad Company, they put $17 million into this production. I mean, good Lord. I mean, I think Blade Runner was only a little bit more than that, to be perfectly honest. Hmm. I would say, I mean, that's the thing. There's like two or three major mountain climbing sequences in this movie, and they're all, breathtaking in their own way. Uh, like this right here. That's a treacherous mountain to go down. It's really treacherous. And remember, like I said, one aspect that this film got a tiny amount of praise for was the 1930s mountain techniques. I actually kind of wish I had a real mountain climber with this commentary with me, so he could probably explain to me, yeah. So this is what mountain climbing was like in the 30s, right? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, this shot is actually on the poster. It's actually a really good shot. As they try to make it down, but of course it's going to take another 5 minutes for one of them to slip and fall to his death. So which one is it going to be? Maybe this might sound weird, but I kind of wish that Sean Connery had died in this movie. I mean, I mean, come on. I guess if you were going to have a choice between Sean Connery or Lambert Wilson to be the more appropriate choice for Betsy Brantley's character, then why not just kill off Sean Connery? I mean, why not? See, that's the thing. I'm even baffled at the survivor at the end of this movie. I'm even baffled at the decision to make Sean Connery the survivor. Sure, he's the star, but I mean, this movie is completely unsatisfying. And that's the thing. It's like when Connery survives, do we feel elated by that? Not really. And of course, I mean, we're talking about the character. We're not talking about Connery himself, but here again, this is one of his weakest characters. I mean, Outland was, a spectacular movie for High Noon in Space. Uh, but that is, much, much superior to this in terms of, the movies that Sean Connery made for the Lad Company. Ugh. Yep, he's going to fall eventually. It's just a matter of time. I mean, here again, I mean, let's get it over with. Let's get this over with already. 1 hour, 36 minutes. We got 13 minutes left to go. Oh, good Lord. Well, I'll be going to bed as soon as this commentary is over. Well, actually, we got about 10 minutes left. Let me just say that this week we will be doing just horror film commentaries. We'll be doing Daughters of Satan, starring Tom Selleck. I actually just watched this last night. I mean, this is a weird, weird, weird movie. Tom Selleck's second movie. So we'll be talking about this a little bit later in the week. And then we're also going to do Night of the Lepus, which is, right here, Night of the Lepus. I'm not going to explain what this movie is about yet if you don't know yet. It's, But this is a real cheesy horror film from '72 that just I have to do a commentary for it. I have to do it. Um, and then on Saturday night, we will be doing The Possession of Joel Delaney, starring Shirley MacLaine. And Halloween night, we're going to do Don't Torture a Duckling, directed by Lucio Fulci. And after that, we'll be doing the 100th anniversary commentary for Haxan, Witchcraft Through the Ages, which came out in 1922. And here we have The Rock's. Now, I see what Fred Zinnemann did here. Like, he goes for a close up of Sean Connery's face as he's, buried beside the rock. And then we realize that one of them has fallen to his death. But of course, we don't know which one yet. And here again, I mean, in the last 10 minutes of this movie, it attempts to have this little dummyish, obviously a little dummyish, but what are you going to do? Oh, even the toughest stuntman in Hollywood wouldn't be willing to do that. No, sir. Yeah, let's see how far this dummy will go down. let's see where this dummy lands. Oh, we didn't even see his final spot. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I kind of wish they had just, let Sean Connery die rather than Lambert Wilson. But hey, that's how Fred Zinnemann wanted to end his final movie. So be it. Oh, she's taking off the ring. Yeah, she's about done with this relationship. I think we only had like that one scene with her and Lambert Wilson together. Like literally one scene where he confronts her about this relationship and it's like that's it. That's all you could write seriously? That's all you could seriously write? Down from the mountain by now. Yeah. They should have been down by now. Uh, I wish this was the television version now because it would have been over about 8 minutes ago. uh, and that's the thing. I have never seen this movie played on commercial television. I never ever saw it being played. I don't know if that was due to the incest angle or what, because, like I said, for a PG movie, this is G rated. This is pretty much G rated. But no, we can't give a movie a G rating when it's about incest. Are you kidding? We can't do that. Yeah, see, as you can see, there's only one person in the distance. Only one survived the fall. We all know who it's going to be. Hmm. I survived the mountain because I am Bond, James Bond. Here again, some more lovely shots, some more admittedly very lovely shots of the Alps. Oh, yeah. Try jumping on the sled. Try jumping on the sled and going down the mountain there. That would be cool. That'd be super cool. Uh, and this is not much of an ending, to be honest. This movie's ending is just so blah. I mean, after sitting through 108 minutes of this movie, I wanted so much more than just you know, them just going their separate ways and being like, okay, I guess I'll see you in the next life. It's that kind of ending. It's like, okay, where I don't think they even say goodbye to each other. I think they just like smile and then Sean Connery just leaves. Ugh. And see, it doesn't even, well, I mean, it was all an accident, of course, but you got to figure that she probably suspects that Connery might have killed him. You got to have suspected that. But I don't think Fred Zinnemann even addresses that possibility. I mean, it's just, yeah. It's like, oh, you're alive. Okay. I guess I won't be going to bed with Lambert Wilson now. Bond, get up. Seriously. Uh, we are coming up on 1 hour, 42 minutes, and 30 seconds. 1:42:30. We got 6 minutes, approximately 6 minutes left to go of 500 Days, One Summer. It feels like 500 days. Oh, yeah, he just fell. Okay. Okay. See, we get nothing more after that. It's like, okay. Uh, oh yeah, yeah, the procession where the guy frozen for 31 years that the production crew managed to find. I guess they just did a little eulogy for him. Yeah, they might have dressed up for the real eulogy. Who knows? Hmm. Yeah, let's just look at each other. We don't have to say anything. I'm coming home after the inquest. Will you be there? Nope. Nope. Uh, oh, sure, she still loves him, but uh, let's just uh, let's just quietly end this little relationship that we got. Let's just quietly end it. His wife is still alive too, so not only is he committing adultery, on top of incest. I mean, God. Now I wish Connery had died in this movie. No. Uh, and see, that's the thing. She just leaves him. That's it. That's the end of the movie. Like, okay. All right, Fred. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Grandpa Fred loves to keep his camera rolling for all this. And mercifully, the movie is now over. Produced and directed by Fred Zinnemann. Screenplay by Michael Austin. Yeah. Sorry, dude. Your script sucked. Executive producer Peter Beal, director of photography Giuseppe Portuno. He deserves some applause, definitely. Production designer Willie Holt. Oh, I didn't mention this. Stuart Baird, of all people, edited this movie. He did Superman. He did the Superman films with Richard Donner. And then he eventually edited the Lethal Weapon movies, and eventually he became a director himself. For I think his first film was that's Steven Seagal movie where he died with Kurt Russell. Executive Decision. Yeah, Executive Decision. That was the first movie he directed and everything. So yeah, that is 5 Days, One Summer. A mostly forgettable movie. I mean, some nice shots, some second unit mountain photography. Arthur Wooster, Herbert Raditching, and Tony Riley and Leo Dickinson. Hey, they all deserve credit. The mountain climbing scenes in this movie at least are something. But here again, unless you're a mountain climbing enthusiast, I just can't see anybody else being interested in this movie. I mean, especially Connery fans. This is like the most sleep-inducing Connery film that you will ever check out if you really do want to check it out. But look, hey, I mean, the movie's on DVD. You can get the Warner Archive DVD over at Amazon, but you can also rent it too. And I'm pretty sure that the copy, the quality of the print that I'm watching is the exact same quality on the DVD. So, and here again, no extras. So it's not like you can get anything more than just the movie, including especially in the beginning with like the Lad Company logo, the tree logo opened up and everything. A lot of anomalies, a lot of visual anomalies. Sincere thanks to the townships and people of Patricina, Samidian, Sils Maria, Maloda, Latch, to Paul Nig and the Alpine Climbing School of Patricina, and the Yuli Balfris and Capitito Wisman of the Helicopter Alpine Rescue Service. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And the credits just keep on going. they just they're just, they don't want to stop at this point. This movie doesn't want to end. It literally does not want to end. Like, say what you will about Fred Zinnemann, but he just like he took his time with this movie. And I think that's one of the problems here is that, come on, wake up, Grandpa Fred. We got to get to the shot. But here again, to close out the commentary, I will say, Fred Zinnemann, he went through a lot to make this movie. It is just a shame that the movie just came out the way it did, which is not very good. But he went through a lot. On a technical level, he went through a lot to make this movie, had to deal with a lot of issues during production. And, the final product isn't memorable, but at the same time, I still respect what he went through. So, by the Lad Company, Great Britain Limited, 6 Broad Street Place in London, EC2. Filmed on location in Switzerland and Great Britain. And so, yeah, that is 5 Days, One Summer. I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. I'll be doing my next commentary on the 27th of October, and that will be on Daughters of Satan, starring Tom Selleck. Hope you all can join me then. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining me for 5 Days, One Summer, and I will see you